So, uh, hello everyone. Welcome and to Kaggle Day's Meetup Delhi NCR. Hi, Andrada.
Hello, hello.
So, I wish you all are doing well, guys. So, in the session of our online meetups, we are back with our 20th meetup. And today's agenda is like from 7 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. IST. We will be having the session on the topic mentioned and by Andrada Olteanu. And then for 15 minutes, we will be discussing the questions or doubts related to the topic. So you guys feel free to comment on the live chat, and we will be picking up the questions direct from there to ask all of your queries from to Andrada. Then from 8 to 8:30 p.m. we will be having ask me session. So Parul Pandey will be joining us then, and Parul Pandey and Andrada will be taking up that session too. So yeah, and we are having with us one of my favorites, Miss Andrada Olteanu, and the Kaggle notebooks master. And I know like she has had an amazing journey on Kaggle. So I welcome her, and over to you, Andrada.
Okay, so hello everybody. I'm super glad you could join us today. I'm gonna start actually sharing my screen. Okay. So this presentation kind of contains so I'm doing a presentation on mastering your data science notebook flow. When Aaron first asked me, what would you like to present? I was a little bit torn, that I was looking at other presentations from Kaggle Days, and I was like, oh my God, these are so interesting topics, but what can I truly give to the community in terms of my experience and what I'm actually very good at? This was my thinking process. And I figured that people really they seem to enjoy my notebooks flow and how I organize things. So I was thinking maybe I can share a little bit with what I do in terms of that. So hopefully you're going to enjoy it. It's Saturday, and I'm super glad you've joined us today. And hopefully you're going to get some good things out of this. Okay, so starting with a cartoon. So I don't know if any of you watched this cartoon when you were little. I was super obsessed with it. It was the Powerpuff Girls, and just a little bit of a background story if you haven't watched it. It was about these super powerful three little girls. And their dad, who kind of couldn't have kids, and he decided to kind of make his own kids. So the recipe was adding sugar and then spice and then everything nice, and then it was another magic formula that I'm not going to go into just because I don't want to bore you. But the basic is that these three little girls kind of linked to all these ingredients, and they were super powerful, and they were fighting the evil, and I don't know, they were super nice. So in terms of our notebook flow and how we organize, there are also three ingredients, or I kind of organized this presentation into three ingredients. So first of all is the content part. Second is the visual part, or how you show the information. And then it's the sharing part, which I'm going to explain a little bit later. What I want to point out is that, so I've concluded this presentation trying to find all those kind of checkboxes I usually go over when I'm doing my notebook. I'm not going to present you anything that I've never done or I will be doing. Everything is what I am doing right now, and it's working for me, and I stand by them. So yeah, let's get started. So in the content part, we have 9 ingredients. And first of all is choosing your topic wisely. And I started with this because when so you want to do a notebook, you want to do a Medium post or whatever, this doesn't apply only to Kaggle. It's about any data science notebook. You really want to be sure that you're passionate about what you're writing. You can't really write about something that doesn't spark your interest in some area. So I usually go over to competitions if I want to do a competition, and I literally go over everything and every description, and I'm like, okay, what do I like? What sparks my interest? And this is what I usually choose. You can also use topics, and I gave here 3 examples only because I think, last year I was starting to get a bit passionate about deep learning, and I didn't really understand what's deep learning. How do you do it? And it's a quite a heavy topic for me. I think it's I'm very sure not. I think I'm very sure it still is. So out of the curiosity, and I really, really wanted to learn more and understand more, I started selfishly doing these notebooks just for myself, being like, okay, I'm going to get very deep in this, and I'm going to really understand this stuff. So I did one for feed-forward neural networks, convolutional, and then recurrent neural networks. And then it would have been even more selfishly that if I didn't share them with you, just because I felt like this topic was extremely important, and explanations out there aren't that many. So you can find a topic that you like, and you can exploit that as well. And then you can go also to things like you can write about COVID, Wall Street bets, worldwide events, anything that sparks your passion and you really, really like. This is the beauty of data science. It doesn't only apply to one field, it applies to many of them. So you can truly do a notebook on whatever makes you feel happy. Okay, the second thing is you really want to do something new every time. What does this mean? As you're going to create more and more content out there, you want to be sure that you are challenging yourself in every notebook. And I'm going to give you an example of my timeline. In mid-2019, I started doing Kaggle and creating notebooks. I didn't even know what I was doing back then. But the only thing I was trying to do is understanding data science, because I was a super noob. I was just learning Python, so I didn't know anything. So I was getting on my basic skills. And looking back at those notebooks, most of them, like almost all of them, were pandas, were Python, like basic Python and data manipulation, how to do visualizations, and I was super sloppy at them, how to do basic processing. It was so hard to me to remember those basic functions that now I'm typing, I dream them. But at that point, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, and some basic ML competitions, just because I was just finished with the Kaggle machine learning courses, And so the natural progression was to going into the Iowa competition. So this is all I was doing. I was just trying stuff. And then in early 2020, I was getting curious. Okay, so what's everything about? So I was doing sentiment analysis. I don't know from where I heard about sentiment analysis the first time, but I remember I really wanted to do sentiment analysis. I was like, oh, this sounds so cool, on Elon Musk's tweets. I didn't get to do this, but this was in my head. I was starting doing more complicated ML, not necessarily different. It was still supervised or unsupervised machine learning techniques, but I was going a bit deeper. I was experimenting. I was starting learning a little bit of deep learning, just very, very little, because I also doing that in my master's. And then I was creating some better notebooks overall, kind of more, I kind of started to understand that, oh, I'm doing notebooks now. So I need people that can see them. Oh, so I need to make them good. And then until now, getting wild, trying lots of stuff that kind of look interesting to me. I started doing more and more competitions just because I realized they are so valuable. Then evolved is a big word, but evolved in the deep learning techniques. I'm still learning a lot. I started being more curious about other libraries. I'm trying new stuff every time. I'm Googling all the time. And then my notebook structure got more complex and complex. So what I want you to take from this long slide is that so if you are outputting a notebook now, you're okay, this is my notebook. And you're comparing it with your other notebooks. If in this one that you've just created is nothing new, it doesn't have to be like a whole nother area. But if it's nothing new you did, a new technique, a new twist, a new something, it means that you aren't really evolving, and you want to do at least little steps every little notebook. So by the end of 1 year, for example, after 4 or 5 notebooks that you've done out there, you know that you have a progression. Okay, so write understandable code. This one for me is super important. It's extremely important. And maybe because I'm a data analyst at base, so I was a data analyst before data scientist. So comparing to maybe software engineers or data engineers or whatever, I am not very comfortable with coding like other people are. And this is why this is for me super important. Because when you're outputting a notebook out there, you want to make sure that the person that's reading your code understands it, no matter the level. And here I have, for example, 2 functions. This is my code, by the way. Everything is, I didn't copy from anybody. So this is a function, and this is exactly the same function, but a little bit different, but they do the same things. Let's look at here. So we have defined a getInfo function. GetInfo, I have no idea what information, but we get it. Okay, and then the variable x. I have no idea what's x. And then we have an a variable, which is so we are reading an image. Good. So so this is the path. So x should be the name of the image, probably. Okay. And then we are converting this a image from BGR to RGB. Good. Data frame. What's this variable? I have no idea. TR, what's TR? I've never used it. I've never seen it before. Okay, of image. So we are having a data set that's kind of selecting the name of the image. Okay, good. So we are printing something. I have no idea what we're printing, a lot of stuff. And then we are plotting the image. So it took me 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute to understand what this function is doing, right? Now, let's go to this one, which is, as I said, exactly the same thing. So what are the differences? We have get image info. Okay, so we know what we're getting, an image information. And then instead of X, we have a name. Okay, so the name of the image, probably. And then we have a sample image. So we are reading the sample image. We are converting sample data frame. So we are kind of extracting the information from a data frame. And then we print, but we know what we are printing. We're printing the number of operations, some titles, number of unique groups, and then we are plotting this sample image. So it's a little bit more lengthy, like this function. It's not that compressed, but last I checked, I don't think Kaggle is asking for money or anything if you're writing more code. And in my opinion, if you're writing more code, but you're explaining stuff and you are being careful on how you actually put it out there, it's going to be super easy for somebody, and especially for you when you are going back to what you did. Okay, write clean code. So we already wrote understandable code. Now we want to write clean code. Again, we have the same function here. Nothing changed. And then we evolved a little bit from the last one. We now have a description of the function. In my opinion, any function, no matter the small or big, there should be a description of the function, because it's super quick. You immediately understand what you're doing there. It displays a photo, okay, so we already know, of the image and information on it. And then we also know what's the variable format of the name. I usually hate it when people are using functions and then I have to go somewhere in the code where they are using that function to see the format of the variables they are using. Like, I don't know, we are inputting a string, you're inputting a table, what are you doing here? So we know it's a string containing the code of the image in .spec format. And then comments. Comments are super important. We read in the image and corresponding metadata. So we don't even need to read this stuff now. We already know from the comment. Also here we are printing, and as you can see here, I've also colored my prints to be a little bit different from the output. I'm going to show you in a second what I'm saying, and then we are plotting the image. So these blank spaces are also super important, just because you have here the description, here you're reading, here you're printing, and here is the plotting. So in my opinion, this presentation, by the way, is only my opinion, but it's much easier to read something like this, especially for somebody that's never seen your code, whereas from here. Okay, so this is the output I wanted to show you from these two functions. So this is the first function. We are getting like a wrapping bubble. We have no idea what this is. We have a 15, some text, and then a 2. I have no idea what it is. Versus this one, when you have clearly, okay, the number of operations is 15, it's color-coded, you can read them easily. Then you have some titles, maybe descriptions on this image, and then number of unique groups. So this image appears in 2 groups. So it's much more easy to digest, I would say, the information. Okay, I've already talked about commenting. I'm going to talk a little bit more, just because, as I've said, I feel like they are super, super important. So here are 2 chunks of code from a function that I've done that have no commenting whatsoever. So for an experienced person, this is, by the way, clean code, and this is also understandable code. But there aren't any comments. For somebody that's super knowledgeable, they can go very quickly from everything. But for somebody that's learning, and usually on Kaggle, in my opinion at least, people are going into a notebook to learn, it might be a little bit hard. So commenting is super important. As you can see here, it makes a little bit of a difference. You have here, okay, we are creating instances, best stroke, patience, we have the model, initialized, optimizer, scheduler, then we are reading the data, then we are creating the data instances. The people familiar with PyTorch are gonna get this. And then the data loaders, I usually put a little bit of funny comments sometimes. So the story behind this one is that I couldn't figure out for 2 days, it was 2 days, I couldn't figure out why my model wasn't training. It wasn't learning anything. And I was getting to desperation when I realized I put here shuffle equals to true for validation and test data. And when I figured that was the issue, I wrote this comment, shuffle needs to be false, otherwise function won't work. How do I know? So I'm sometimes being cheeky in my comments. I have no idea if anybody saw that, but this is why I was cheeky, just because it took me like a long time to figure that out. Yeah, and then you have inference and evaluation. So it's super easy to read through the lines, to kind of scan, which in my opinion is super, super important. Commenting style. You can comment in many ways. You can comment using like an uppercase. You can comment like in the first word, and lowercase in the first word. You can opt to not put here a space between the hashtag and your first word. You can put 3 hashtags. You can comment like this or like this, like with lines or with little snakes, tildes, I think. Yeah, and you can comment like this. So I've seen many notebooks, and many notebooks use many styles of commenting. Now, there's nothing you can use that which is good or bad. But what I want to emphasize in here is that you want to choose a style, whatever style you want to choose. For example, this one, right? You want to choose it and you want to stick with it from the beginning to the end of the notebook. This is a very small detail, but when people are going to go into your notebook and they see it's super organized, but they usually don't know where to put their finger on it. Like what makes this notebook so organized? It's the little details, the super tiny little details that makes it super structured and coherent. So I usually don't use one style. I might be using, so one style is usually 80% or 85% of the times I'm using this style. But then when I want to kind of separate something or attract attention, I might be using something like this or something like this. But try to be super thoughtful on the style of the commenting and use maximum of 2 or 3 in one notebook. And be careful where you're using each style. Okay, clean visualizations. Okay. Clean visualizations are absolutely of the most importance in my opinion. And I know there are people that don't bother with visualizations, and it's fine. There are people that like more to code, to model. There are people that like to showcase more, or there are people that like to write about articles and so on. So it doesn't matter. But the difference between, so by the way, these two visualizations have the same information in them. This one is one line of code, which is just plotting. And here, I think it has 5 to 6 lines of code. So the difference is super tiny. And it takes, I think, 30 seconds to get from here to here. Now, the difference is that a person can understand much better this graph and much quicker than this one. Here, I don't know what's this about. I don't have a title. I'm like, oh, paper, it's like, oh, frequency. Oh, so frequency of these words in something. And oh, Victoria, what's Victoria? Oh, 12, it's super tiny. What's happening here? So many colors. So this is usually like, oh, I'm gonna pass this. So you want people, if you want to showcase something and you're doing a visualization, you want them to understand what you want to present to them. And it's super easy to come from this point. So I would also checkpoint a few things when you're doing a visualization. First of all, size your graph. So it's super important this. You want to size your graph so that, for example, here, the words are visible. They are not cluttered like here. Second of all, you really don't want to forget to put a title. Sometimes the title of the graph is more important than the title of the axis. The title of the axis aren't that important, but the title of the graph is super important because you want to understand what's within the graph. It's like a flash summarization, right? Another thing in bar charts, here, I don't want to showcase different types of words. I just want to show what are have the biggest frequencies and which one have the lowest frequencies. Because of that, I don't need 20 colors I don't need a rainbow. Yeah, sometimes we all need a rainbow. In this case, we don't. So you can settle on whichever color you want, but you want to be careful with the color. Don't overdo it if it's not necessary. And in this case, in a bar plot, I usually like to put the numbers instead of the x-axis. I like to put them on the bars. I feel like it's easier to read and follow. Yeah, so visualizations, you guys, is super important in my opinion, like super important. Take just 30 seconds more on each one to make it stand out and be clean. Okay, so I'm a huge addict on Schemas. Maybe going back to the fact that I was a data analyst before. I feel like when you have something, so we are most of the humans, not everybody, but most of the humans are 80% visual and the other 20% text or language. And you want to exploit that. How do people understand better? Through explaining them or through showing them? And I found that for me, so this worked for me, and this is why I put them there, just because it helped me in a flash of a second understand what's happening. Instead of going through the code, I want to go through the code if I really not really need to, but if it interests me. So, for example, this schema was on around 200 lines of code on the melanoma competition. It was actually a code from Roman, I think. Yeah, Roman. And I kind of took the structure of it and played with it a little bit. But I ended up with 200 lines of code. Who reads 200 lines of code? Sometimes not me. So what I did was I created a schema. I'm looking at the time just because I don't want to be over. Okay, so you want to do a schema if you think it is going to help you. So here, instead of reading 200 lines of code, you just look at everything. So it's the first fold, you're going into the training data set, which splits into the train and validation. Then you have set up the model, the optimizer. Okay, so we are going into an epochs, and then within an epoch, we train the model, we evaluate, we save, we update the scheduler, and then once we are out of the epoch, we're going into inference, and then we are inferencing the validation data set, and then the test data set with DTA, and then we're going to cleaning the environment, and then poof, to fold 2. So in 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute if you want to go into details here, you understand immediately what 200 lines of code do. If you put comments, by the way, within the chunks of code, you can kind of point these explanations into the code. So it's going to be super easy for them if they want to look only how to save the model. You're going to go where it says saving the model and you're going to read only that part. So schemas are super important. You can do schemas on a bunch of stuff. Here is, for example, on some data that when I started this competition, I didn't really understand the structure of the data. So I was like, if I don't understand the structure, maybe there's a little small chance, but maybe there's somebody else who's gonna come into this competition. They won't have the patience to read the data, and this is gonna be helpful for them. So don't think that a schema, if you're making it, you're gonna everybody knows this. They don't need it. They don't need it. Chances are it's extremely wrong. So it's not true. If you make a schema, show this, because there are some people that might benefit from it. And then I also use schemas. I think I discovered schemas while learning the basics of deep learning, because it was such a black box for me, and I realized I understand it so much better if after I do the deep learning architecture of a model, I do also a schema where I have like the inputs, they are super clear here. We have the image size, everything super here. We have 2 layers of RNN, and then we have the output, and then we have a feed-forward neural network with 100 neurons, and then this is the batch, and then the output and the log probabilities. Like, it's super, super easy and quick. And I found out that doing a schema was also consolidating what I've learned. So super, super important. The last step in content, I know I said everything is super important, but I feel like this one is mandatory. So the other ones were optional, but this one, in my opinion, it's mandatory. We are doing notebooks to share whatever we are doing. most of the people, or at least I hope all the people that share their work know that there are other people that are going to look at this and get inspired and use the things that they do. This is how we evolve as humans. However, if you are using something from somebody else's work, it doesn't matter. It's techniques, it's a function, it's a methodology, it's a paragraph that you copied like a text, or is the overall organization of your notebook. Give credit to that person. This is super important because you, first of all, pay tribute to the human that taught you or helped you develop in that part. And you're also acknowledging their help. So I put here just a few of the examples in my notebooks where I referenced somebody. This is the melanoma that I've been talking about with Roman, who actually his entire notebook helped me develop like none other in deep learning until now. And I think I've said like 3 times in that notebook, thank you, Roman, thank you, Roman, thank you, Roman, you're amazing. Please continue to do content because I'm smarter now. Here was for Laura, because Laura Fink, because she helped me a lot with understanding how to connect GitHub with Kaggle. Here I used a tweet from Bojan Tungus. Hopefully I'm not destroying your name. I'm very sorry. He's an amazing guy and I'm following him everywhere. And I've seen this tweet and I used it in one of my notebooks and I gave him credit because it was his tweet. Parul, for example, for one notebook where I used his scraped data for the bird call recognition. And this notebook, I wasn't even using something particular from Xavier's and Catherine, but their work helped me in the sentiment analysis zone. It was a sentiment analysis notebook developed so much that I felt compelled to just acknowledge them, be like, thank you, you two were an inspiration and you helped me so much. So giving credit I feel like it's sometimes maybe you think that, oh, I'm not that smart enough, or I couldn't think of that if people think that I couldn't think of that if I pay credit. But this is extremely important because people don't go to your notebooks to judge you. They come to your notebooks just to understand the information and process it and learn by themselves. So this is just a very mandatory, in my opinion, addition to give credit where it's due. Okay, so going to the visualization and organization part. We have 6 ingredients here. First of all, when you write in a notebook or a Medium post or whatever, so we are talking only on Kaggle stuff. You don't have to have a grammar or a writing like you're writing a scientific paper. So nobody is looking at that. However, there are lots of people, lots of data scientists from many, many countries, and usually English is our common ground. And you just want to make sure that your English is understandable, meaning that when you write something, when you're explaining something, the guy that's coming after is going to understand. Like I am like, sometimes it's a bit foggy and I write super fast. And then I go back and I'm like, I have no idea what I was saying here. I need to proof this. So proof your work. I use Grammarly for just grammar stuff. And then I love Thesaurus for synonyms or antonyms where you're repeating awesome, awesome, awesome all the time. And you maybe want to try another word who might be a little bit more compelling. So these 2 are super, super nice. Another thing, you want to take advantage of the tools in Markdown. So again, these are 2 same chunks of information, but here is quite, how should I say this? It's not colorful. And here it's a little bit more structure, it's a bit easier to skim through the information. So I'm using a heading here, I'm splitting the paragraphs, I'm using bolding whenever I feel like it's necessary, I'm linking to things. Bullet points are super important just because they structure the information better. So you want to take advantage of these things, but also don't overdo it. You don't want to do, just because they are super awesome, you don't want to do more than it's necessary. Like if you're using a heading and you are talking about the same thing below the heading, don't make other headings, or don't use bullet points if it's not necessary. Be careful with the bolding. Sometimes we bold stuff that's not important, or we italize. We use italics to also show something that's not really important. So usually what I do is I write something and then I go over it, and only afterwards I bold or I italize some stuff or I link to some things. First of all, I just read, and then I prove what I write, and then I prove what I write. Color schemes. They seem to be quite popular in my notebooks. Everybody's like, oh, your color schemes. So I don't think, I've tried to look, I don't think I've ever not used color schemes, just because it's something so compelling, and I love it so much when the colors are coordinating. This site colors is super, super amazing, but you can find many other platforms when you can find palettes, color palettes, or you can make your own. But usually at the beginning of your notebook, you want to create a color scheme, and afterwards you want to use it not only in your visualization, but in almost everything if it's possible. So in visualization, in schemas, very important in schemas. Maybe in printing, if you're printing something with color, you want to use the same palette as well. And if you are able to use that, if you're using a cover photo, that's like a double bonus for you. Yeah, so I love them, and you can just choose whatever you feel like intrigues you. Like, there's no rule here. Okay, emojis. I've seen more and more people using emojis. I love them. I sometimes use them in titles or in headings. Here is actually Parul, Pandey. I first saw this in a notebook at first, and I was astonished. I was like, oh my God, she was doing like an observation or a note or a attention or something like that. And she was using this pin, and I was like, oh, this is too good to not use. Like, absolutely amazing. So in headings, you just, again, want to be careful that you're not overdoing it, because sometimes in text, if you're using too many emojis, you might take out of the attention from what you're actually writing, or from what you're actually coding, your code. So be mindful with it. I usually, again, use it to draw attention to the reader to something. Like this one, it's like a really red dot being like, oh, so this is important. I might need to read this. And the last thing in this part is add your own personality. Now, I don't want you to go home now and be like, oh my God, I need to find my own thing that's going to put in the notebooks. What should I do? Whatever. Because if you're stressing about it, you won't be creative. It took me 6 to 8 maybe months to find something that really clicks within my notebooks. And this was after I've seen so many notebooks. And it takes a while, but you want to take your time, you want to see, and then you want to choose something that's very unique to you, and you like doing it, or you like seeing it within your notebook. For me, it was, so I think the first time I've ever created a cover, a personalized cover for a notebook, was at some point, I think it was in Alaska competition. So it was this tech analysis competition last year. I think it was before that, actually. The thing is, I was trying to find something, but nothing was good on the internet, just a proper image. So I thought, why shouldn't I make my own? I think it was in the deep learning parts. So in the deep learning part, what I ended up doing was like, okay, so it's machine learning and deep learning. Okay, so I'm going to put two brains. One is the human brain, it's like super organic with the trees and lots of watercolored planets. And this means like creativity and the evolution of the brain. And then it's like the machine's brain, who is a little bit less evolved, but we're getting there. And it was like this huge metaphor that I don't even know if anybody got it. But for me, I loved doing this. So I started doing that for all of my notebooks. In the stag analysis competition, I just chose a very cool Alaska image, artsy image, and then I put the Kaggle sign kind of fading because it was about like stag analysis, like hidden information within an image. And then this one is from bird call recognition, which I loved. And I did another one for a second notebook, which I never published, but I did the cover, which was super like sleek and with the birds and the feathers. And now I'm usually doing kind of banners like with usually contents within it that are indicate to the topic. So I might change them in a few months. I'm just letting my creativity go, but I love doing this. So the point is here, you want to take your time and find something that really inspires you, that really makes you happy, and just go for it afterwards. Okay, and the last ingredient is sharing. And this might be, so content and visualizations are super important. Visualization of the organization of the notebook, kind of. But the ultimate goal within your notebooks should be to share knowledge, because this is why you're doing it. You want to share knowledge with yourself. You want to share knowledge with other people. You want to share knowledge with the community. And you want to bring this passion and this desire within to help or to explore something that you are trying to do within your notebook in a matter that you kind of teach the people. And there are many studies on this showing that when you learn something for yourself, it's not that you're going as deep as when you're learning something to teach them afterwards, because you have the end user in mind. You're being like, I write this line of code. Okay. Do I understand it? Kind of. Yeah, but the other guy, which I'm going to teach, the other person, I need to go to them and maybe they are going to ask me, what is this line of code? And I'm not going to know. So I need to understand what this line of code is doing. So then if they ask, I know what to reply. If you're going into creating a notebook with this mindset, having this idea in mind through the end, I can almost guarantee you will do such an amazing work and you're going to have such fruitful notebooks and posts in terms of information that it's going to be absolutely amazing. So I highly recommend you having this mindset once you're starting doing this type of content. Yeah, so thank you lots, everybody, for listening. 45 minutes. I am on time. Super excited. I didn't know. Okay, so it's exactly 45 minutes. I'm super proud of myself. Yeah, and if there are any questions, please just shoot. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrada. And this was a really very wonderful presentation.
Hi, Parul.
Like,
Sorry.
hi, Parul. Welcome you. So, yeah, like there are some questions for you, Andrada. Like, the one of the question is, how from yeah. So one of the question, it was the comment from one of our viewer. So like, indeed, yeah, you are. Actually, the
Okay.
question was, which tool do you use for your schemas? Like, do you like to answer for that?
So this is not gonna be very interesting. I use so you can use PowerPoint. I don't really like using PowerPoint, so I go over to Google presentations, I think, in Drive, and I usually use these for schemas. Like, it's exactly that.
Okay. So yeah, the another question was like, how to speed up your models? Like, any tips from?
Okay, so I can give you like two examples. Before I had any GPUs at home, I was using only the Kaggle environment. And usually, for example, and I'm thinking now of the SEG analysis competition just because I just talked about it. It was super, super hard to use all these images. And what I did is, because sometimes you can create models by using only a part of your data. Nobody tells you that you need to use everything at once combined. It's best to use that because if you have data and it's of quality, it's best to use all of it. But you can just slice it up. And right now I'm using GPUs. I'm getting familiar with them. I'm getting familiar with Rapids and with GPU versions of PyTorch. So this is something you can use as well.
Yeah, thank you, Andrada, for such an awesome answer. Like, quite good comments, right? Mary Kondo of notebooks, quite good. So like, I welcome Parul ma'am too to the event. Welcome, Parul ma'am.
Thank you
And
so much,
now,
and hello everybody.
yeah, and now we can just start the Q&A session, like Ask Me Anything session. Like maybe Parul ma'am and Andrada can together answer a few questions. Like maybe those are related a little bit to Andrada's talk, but maybe we can answer them together too, right? So like, any like first question is like, this one is like, what inspired you to make a pirate themed notebook on Kaggle survey data?
So, okay. The first, so I joined Kaggle in 2019. And I didn't go into that Kaggle survey competition. It wasn't really a competition, but it was an analytics competition in that year because I thought I don't have the skills to do this. I wasn't feeling prepared, and it was a mistake because even if you don't feel like you're prepared, you need to try because this is how you're gonna do better and better. But I remember I saw a notebook from Parul, and I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. So this is when I started understanding, like, why don't people do these kind of notebooks all the time? Why do they have to be only for a competition? And I kind of stole bits of how they organized, being like, oh my God, so this is what a notebook should look like. And afterwards, fast forwarding to summer 2020, my partner actually, he's in cybersecurity. So he had to make a write-up. And I helped him a lot with the organization of the notebook. And I loved it. I didn't go into the techie part. He's the techie guy, but I really started doing like the organization and how the visuals are looking and so on. And I remember I stumbled upon an article which I can't for the life of me find right now, on something. It was I think a deep learning topic, and that person used a map of like a game to show, so for deep learning you need to start here with this stuff and then you need to learn here, and he was using like the countries were steps to learn that deep learning process. That I can't remember, but I was so inspired about the fact that it was a map that when I started this last year's Kaggle survey competition, I was like, I need to have a map in there. And from that map, I thought, okay, so if I have that map, although it came later in the process, but when I started my first line of code in that notebook, I knew I'm going to have a map. I was like, okay, maybe I can do it like a story, like kind of integrating the map into the story of the notebook. Okay, we are pirates. We are trying to understand something. I took advantage of the fact that it was about like high-paid people being like, okay, we're going to find the gold, we're going to find the treasure, which is kind of the knowledge they have. And this is the idea. The map kind of drew me towards the pirate theme. And I don't know if you noticed, but also the map uses lots of words that are, hopefully I'm using this in English correctly, archaic, kind of like old, citadel instead of tower, or I'm using like very old type of words to analyze something, being like, oh, this is very old and piratey stuff. I don't know. Yeah, so this is the story of the map.
Yeah, thank you. Quite interesting one. So like I would love to ask Parul ma'am about, like, is there a specific way to go through the Kaggle notebooks of others, like, because it's an art, right? So any tips, or what would be your suggestions to anyone in this dilemma? So maybe you can unmute yourself, Parul ma'am.
Yeah. So am I audible now?
Yeah.
Now that's a, I think, very subjective question depending upon how good the notebook has been created. So if somebody creates a nice notebook, which I assume, so it will have an introduction and then it sort of will explain what every line of code or that sort of code does and what that person wants to achieve through that notebook. So that should be an ideal way of creating a notebook, and that should be done because as a notebook is a code that you are presenting to the world, it's public, and then you should make sure that the others who read it can actually comprehend. And ideally, you should not always focus towards people who are like adept in programming and who understand every aspect of it. Try making your notebooks understandable for even beginners, because those are the ones who are actually mostly benefited by them. Because a person who's actually very proficient in coding and ML sometimes won't even need to look at all the notebooks. So firstly, I think if you go to a competition or any sort of competition, just see which are the most voted notebooks. But then again, it's a disclaimer that majority is not always right. That's one of the sad part of Kaggle that's happening right now, because a lot of votes, there's been rigging going on, and it's sometimes they're great notebooks and they don't get their due. I mean, I've seen a lot of notebooks where people fork the notebooks, but they don't vote it. That's a crime on Kaggle. I mean, if you like somebody's notebook so much that you're actually using it, why not just vote it? It doesn't cost. On the other hand, there are some notebooks which manipulate the hotness algorithm and they'll always be on top. They'll just sort of update. So be aware of it. Don't just go blindly what you see. Like I always tell in all of my Kaggle meetups, don't go blindly by the tags of grandmasters and masters. Always go and check out the work of the person, and if you like it, only then sort of follow. Just don't go by what people say, because anything which is in competition can be manipulated. Elections can be manipulated. Kaggle is a very simple thing in front of that. So go check the notebooks, and then you should also check who have voted for it. If there are like some, good people who voted, then you should start looking at it, because sometimes a lot of top competition grandmasters do also vote, and then it makes sense. Okay, there is some credibility to it, and then that notebook will be good. And so you can go read one or two, and then you sort of come to know which is a good notebook. Stay away from things which are only doing for voting. That's a very dangerous precedent for Kaggle also. So that would be my idea of it. So for instance, if I'll go and I see there'll be Andrada's notebook, I'll definitely go and open it. So that's how you create your, so now I know, because I've seen her work. And I won't just go blindly because it's hers. I've seen her work. I've seen what sort of good work she does. And so that's a credibility that you need to develop yourself. So that next time you don't have to ask people to vote for your notebooks. As soon as your notebooks comes up, people will say, okay, this is the notebook by her or him. And so I will definitely go and check. So that's the kind of thing you should aim for using Kaggle. Don't just look for votes, don't look for titles, and don't think it as a means to get jobs. You have to get away from that. Only then you'll realize the true potential of Kaggle. So that was more than my 2 cents.
Yeah, exactly. Look, that's quite important, and it's quite necessary, keeping in mind the trends going on in the market, right? So it's really important keeping in mind that is like any additional pointers, Andrada? Anything that you would love to cover? Though I think that Parul ma'am covered a hell lot of useful tips.
I wouldn't I completely 100% agree with her. It's not sustainable to fish the upvotes, and I know it's hard at the beginning. It truly is, especially if you're an expert. But if you're putting great content out there, people are gonna start seeing a pattern. So, and you're kind of building a trust, which is on the long run, not a quick upvote, and then you need to start working all over again. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. So it's quite useful. So just a question, like Jupyter Notebook, it kind of. Mohini, can you mute yourself? Maybe there is. Yeah, sure. Thank you. So like there is another question, like Jupyter Notebook versus Collab versus Kaggle Notebook. What would be your preference?
So which one should we go for the answer, or do we answer both?
Yeah. You please go ahead, Andrada. I love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so I think I usually go with Kaggle notebooks for creating the notebook on Kaggle, and for sharing it, and for exploring. And then for the heavy duty work, I usually copy it on my local machine and then start using Jupyter Notebook. I've never used Collab, but I've heard it's amazing as well.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. For quick analysis, because most of the data sets that I use are on Kaggle, so it makes a lot more sense to just spin off a Kaggle notebook, instead of first downloading it and all sort of things. Jupyter Notebook mostly. So I don't that much use Jupyter Notebook because I do all my coding on Visual Studio, VS Code, and Collab is good for sharing, maybe because again it has GPU capability, so you can easily share with anybody. So that's like, and that's more depends upon the sort of work that you're doing. And all three, I think they serve more or less the same purpose, except that Kaggle notebooks give you the access to GPUs and TPUs. Collab gives you access to GPUs. So I think it's subjective, depends upon your use case, I guess.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Nice. Happens. So it's like, and like as we were talking about GPUs and TPUs, like Kaggle, the things that Kaggle provides. So Saurabh asks any tips for what to use in case Kaggle TPUs and GPUs when they run out. So like maybe a valid question kind of stuff.
Do I go first? We were just. You can go first if you want, Parul,
No,
and then I
please,
can.
please go on. Please.
Okay. I haven't used TPUs, so I'm not gonna talk about them. But about GPUs, I think I've never run out of GPUs, but when I'm starting seeing that it's maybe a Thursday and usually Friday it's the reset, and I'm being like, oh, I have like 3 hours left. I usually, so first of all, you want to make sure that you're using your GPU. If you aren't using it and maybe you're doing some data visualization, you want to stop it. Second of all, you want to be careful that when you are committing your notebook, for example, you after you press the commit, you want to stop the GPU. I've learned this the hard way, but apparently when you're using GPU and you're committing, GPU is used twice. So it's twice because you're already committing a notebook that's using GPU, and afterwards is because you're have an opened notebook that also uses GPU. So you're doubling that decrease. So if you're committing it, you want to make sure again that you are putting it off. So this is another thing that it's really helpful. And I think that's about it from my side. I've never run out of GPU, so maybe I'm super lucky about that.
Okay, so I'll just add in. So if you run out of your GPUs and CPUs, try using GCP. There are two reasons for that. Firstly, if you're a absolutely new beginner and you use it for the first time, you get $300 in credit. And secondly, you'll also get to know how to work with GCP. And I think there's similar thing for Amazon also, so AWS also. So that way, once you finish your quota on Kaggle, try exploring GCP because then you get to, understand how to use cloud. So that will be additional learning for you. And so $300 is a lot. So once you get over with that, then there are a lot of giveaways also, like Paperspace, and these are the companies, Floyd Hub and all, they also provide some credits. So always be on the lookout for such, because I've used them a lot. I don't own a GPU. So there's Paperspace and all. So they keep giving out free GPU credits. So possibly that's a way you can sort of manage. But then ultimately, if you want to take part in this image or text competition, you might need your own setup.
Yeah, like quite good and safe answer. So it's like next is like, before beginning to learn deep learning, what all concepts do you recommend to study and how much thoroughly though? Like it's going to the magnitude of how much thoroughly would be a little bit difficult, but like, yes, what concepts to focus on and stuffs. Andrada, maybe you can go ahead and Parul.
So the deep learning arena is extremely huge, and it covers a lot of information. And besides that, there are so many smart people every year putting something new out there, and you're like, oh my god, I can't even understand the basics from 2010, and these smart people that are coming here and what. So I had a lot of difficulty learning the basics of deep learning. And as I said in my presentation, I'm still learning a lot. In my master's, I didn't have the chance to actually understand them. So I really needed to learn them by myself. Okay, so the first thing I would recommend you do, just because it's computer vision, and then it's also text, and then there's also stuff that are combined, and then there's video and autonomous driving and everything. Start step by step with feed-forward neural networks, just to be super explicit right now. Try to understand the perceptron. Go to the videos on YouTube. It's from 3 Brown, 1 Blue, I think. There are these amazing videos on deep learning, on understanding feed-forward neural networks and how this black box is working and what's backpropagation, and a little bit of math, although maybe if you don't like it, it's still super easy to understand. So I would go with feed-forward neural networks and try to go on YouTube. I found that just reading articles, as I said, we are visual human beings. So try to explore on YouTube as much as you can from the people that have explained visually feed-forward neural networks. And then I went through, and also while you're at it and you are trying to navigate through coding, print everything. Like, don't leave one bit of line unexplained in your head. Be like, okay, what is this doing? How does this look? Why am I doing this? Where I'm going? Because this is how it's going to be a very, very long process. As I said, I think it took me around 1.5, maybe 2 months to fully understand this part. But you want to take your time and be curious and take it step by step. And then after you've gone through this, maybe use some schemas. As I've said, they're super helpful in this area. Go to convolutional neural networks, because maybe it's the next step. And then recurrent, again, with a lot of videos on YouTube and so on. And then you can start dabbling into maybe text instead of images, or I don't know. I think I've learned also in that part, but I've never done a notebook on it, autoencoders and GAN, so generative adversarial networks. But try with this, start with these 3. So feed-forward, convolutional, and recurrent. And then you can start looking at other stuff and experience as you go.
Also, I'd just like to add, so now everybody knows this field is like too big, okay, and every day state of the art changes, like every month actually. So there are 2 aspects of it. So if you are in undergrad or something, what you can do is so like Andrada explained to you how you should go about it if you want to start learning deep learning. So get a basic idea of everything about images and text, so that whenever you see it, you know what to do. And then try and focus on something that you truly like. It could be text or computer vision or video, and so that it's sort of like a T-shaped curve, T-shaped graph. So the base of the T means you have an idea of everything, and then start focusing maybe on one. So what this is going to do is, when you want to apply to companies, you would have focused a lot on one aspect. So maybe in NLP, so then focus more on NLP, because NLP itself is a very big branch, and same thing with computer vision and all. And so you can target companies specific to NLP. So what nowadays people do is, when they apply to companies, so what they'll do is they'll be applying to a computer vision startup, and what projects they'll show in your resume will be related to finance. So that is a mismatch. If I am a person who's going to hire you, and I have a computer vision company and we are doing researches on that, and you show me all examples of, say, financial data and insurance or BFSI sector, it's going to be a mismatch. So that way, choose something that really interests you. It could be language models, could be GANs, anything, and then sort of focus more on that. So that will help you in getting, at least be called for an interview, because most of the students have this great mismatch of what they want to do and what they show on their resume. So that's one part. And secondly is, after you have some understanding of how concepts work, start practically applying it, So because theory will, it's massive. It's you can go on and on in reading. So don't just passively consume everything. So if you've seen a video, once you see it, close it and try replicating it yourself, maybe the code and stuff like that. So if you will not do the practical things, when you'll be watching something or reading a blog, you'll think I know everything. But when the time comes to apply it, it'll be blank. So two things, don't try to focus on a T-shaped learning pattern. And secondly, don't just passively consume content. That's all.
Yeah, that's quite insightful about what stuff to learn and how to map yourself with the industry hiring, right? So we had a similar question, like though Parul ma'am answered it, like what should I do if I want to get hired as a data scientist? First of all, we talked about the project mismatch that the students have in the resume and what the industry wants. That's one of the things that the students should focus upon. But what other stuffs that you would highly suggest someone to learn or to focus on to get hired?
See, what I mostly see with the people nowadays is they think that machine learning is all about text and NLP and all these things. Yes, there are a lot of researchers, and you can see the big companies, but there is considerable amount of companies which still use the basic statistical and machine learning. So there's still logistic regression is used, and things like that are still used, and there are still problems where you only require tabular data. So if you talk about insurance and you talk about, again, like finance, fraud analytics, these are also branches. So you should always have in your mind what kind of work you want to do. Do you want to go for research? Do you want to go for other sectors? And research about the companies, research about like what sort of positions they have, and then try to sort of understand and learn that. So if there's a company which is in banking domain, then you should focus on anomaly detections and fraud analytics and fraud detection, outlier detection, so on, unbalanced data sets. And so that is also one aspect of it. What people nowadays are doing is they just say, that everything is deep learning, and it's not. It's not. Still 80% of use cases in industry are not that. And so you have to focus, and there are a lot of companies which are hiring for that. So start researching for the companies where you want to go. You will have to narrow down like what you want to, which industry excites you the most, and how, and then start working. If you're in college, you have a lot of time, but you want to, if you're still working and you want to switch into data science, use that domain experience and start learning about the domain also, not only about the machine learning aspect, but the domain in which you want to go, because it also matters a lot. Because if I were to say, if a person, if there's a healthcare company and they want to employ machine learning, they would want a good data scientist, but they would also want a good domain expert. So that is what a lot of people, they don't do. They don't research where they want to go. So that's pretty important, I think.
No, so it's kind of quite important to know about the domains, right? So it's like quite good. And rather, like maybe how about like just a fresher, like might be you have been through that passage recently, or like you might suggest someone to go through that. So what would be your personal suggestion to them?
So Parul touched on extremely well points, domain research and understanding, because data science is like so big and it's so vast and you can use it in anything. So you really need to kind of narrow down what you like. What I would like to add to that, in terms of, maybe because we've talked a lot about Kaggle, what made a difference in my employment were, I think, two things. And not only my employment, but the how do you say it? the experiences and the opportunities was the word I got in the last year. And the difference between a person like with a very, very good resume, so with a very, very good resume, and another person with a very good resume, exactly like this person, maybe even less, but with a Kaggle profile where they've showcased that, okay, I know pandas, I say this here on my resume, but then I show you a notebook where I use from the beginning to the end pandas. Like, hello, I really do know pandas. Here is, I know, I have domain expertise, for example, in sports analytics, says in resume. And then you go over to Kaggle for this person and you're like, oh my God, he did like 4 notebooks on March Madness or NFL or how Kobe Bryant was something, or how, I don't know, like he's obviously passionate about sports and so on. So people usually have only their resumes and then they're going into interviews. When you add a portfolio, because this is, in my opinion, and how I view it, this is what Kaggle is, a portfolio of a data scientist. You don't have a portfolio of pictures or drawings that you've made, but you still have something to showcase your work. First of all, it's gonna show that you truly know what you've said in your resume, and second of all, that you're passionate, because you can't possibly, besides a handful of people that I know are working on Kaggle to develop stuff, all 90, maybe 99% of the people on Kaggle are doing this for fun, are doing this for free time, are doing this because they like it, then they are passionate about. And you want to hire somebody that's passionate. Maybe they don't really have everything it takes, but when you see that they want to learn and they are eager and they are like, oh my God, I want to crush this, yes, please come and be a partner with me. So I think working on Kaggle and developing a proper portfolio where you showcase your work is super important. And the next thing would be, in my opinion, social media. I mean, you want to go on LinkedIn, to go on Twitter and showcase that you're passionate about data science. Here I'm at this conference. It was super interesting. We talked about how, for example, I don't know, computer vision should take into account sensorial data. Or here I went to this workshop with this amazing human being, or here I wrote this article on something. So a social media presence, very connected, interconnected to data science, and to show that you really live, breathe, eat data science, in my opinion, is super important. Yeah.
Yeah, so quite insightful from a fresher, from a domain expert kind of thing. So really useful stuffs. Just like the same question I also had when I just started. So it's like data wrangling and deployment are considered one of the core activities, or are one of the core activities of a data scientist. Like if certain data science projects have to see the real world's light, so they have to be deployed somewhere and stuff. And sadly, Kaggle doesn't support much for the same. How significant is data wrangling and deployment of model in your work or in your research?
Okay, so I could start that. So again, data wrangling and data deployment is very important, because the real world data is, everybody knows it's messy, and then unless and until you put your models into production, people won't be able to use it. The end user can only interact with it. Now, see, Kaggle still has a very important role to play in that, because it actually sort of teaches you to create maybe good models and optimize them well. And apart from the normal competitions, there's one aspect of Kaggle which I really enjoy the most, and those are the data science for good competitions. And what is so good about them is they don't have a metric to optimize. They don't have a target. these are open-end questions, and those are, I think, a great way if you don't want to look at only competing for metrics and optimizing them. Or so those are just open-ended questions. And for instance, few years back there was a question on unconscious bias in hiring, and they had provided job reports, the job descriptions of a company, and they were given to you, and then you just had to see whether there was unconscious bias in the job descriptions. So unconscious bias means like you unknowingly put things like, for instance, you'll say that we need him to be good in Python, we need him to be good in data science, and so you are using that word him. So that means that you're already biased. And a lot of companies, they have such job descriptions. They use specific words which they don't realize, but they induce unconscious bias in the job descriptions. And so it was a data given to you, and you were asked to analyze it, and you were to give suggestions to the sort of company, like how would you mitigate them. So there was no metric to optimize, and you had to think on your own. What could be the problem statement? How would I go about what things I can do? NLP was there and a lot of things. Then if you will go back and see, it's a great competition. And there are few other competitions, and they come under the tag of data science for good. They have a prize money. They don't have medals. So you won't get medals, but you'll get a ton of experience. There was one in which you were to analyze the satellite images, and you were given a lot of satellite data. So that was a good way of understanding how to use Google Earth. So if your only motive is not to only gain medals, there are competitions and such things which come out. Even the, the survey analysis, also one of them. So you can participate. You've just given survey, and then you have to come out with the wildest imaginations, how you would want to analyze, what is something that you want to pick. And so this year, for instance, I picked up, because I work in an AutoML company, I wanted to see at the survey from an AutoML point of view. And so I wanted to see how AutoML is progressing. I mean, what the Kagglers think of it. So these are the things which you can work. And then once you analyze all these stuffs, you can sort of create a model out of it. You can create whatever. And their data is not clean. You might have to wrangle the data. So even the survey analysis data wasn't clean. So maybe there are a lot of ways in which Kaggle can be used, and not the typical competitions are not the only ones. And Kaggle is much more than that. So probably that's the way Kaggle also contributes there. So we cannot always say that the problems in Kaggle are not real world. To an extent, they are. It just depends that how you look at them and how do you explore the different facets of Kaggle, I would say.
Yeah. Andrada, any additional pointers? Like, well summarized.
The idea is I'm not comfortable in talking something that I haven't done yet. So I've I am in my first data science position, but I didn't come to the part where we are deploying any model into production, meaning that I didn't come to see how the data science part, which is our little notebook and our little code, go into the end user. And this is a process that you're super curious, and I want to find out myself. So I don't know how much of data science is, or how much is from other person, from, I don't know, software engineer perspective or data engineer perspective. So I'm not going to say anything in that area just because I'm not experienced. But I can say that I so what Parul said, Kaggle, and I also, I think I've seen a discussion on LinkedIn at some point where it was this guy that was saying that Kaggle encourages overfitting. And if you've ever done a Kaggle competition, only if it's as an amateur or only just following the leaderboard, you can know that there are massive competitions with a leaderboard shakeup like crazy. So if anything else, Kaggle is, you it's creating a test set, but then it's creating a test set of a test set, and it's giving you that test set, and then you are splitting the data again. So don't end up with a training, validation, and a test. You end up with many more checkers than you usually use in your work. So I feel like that's a super, super important part that you can learn from Kaggle, to kind of don't fool the leaderboard, because you just can't. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And like, though the questions coming today through the comments are really in the flow that we wanted to go. It's like we were talking about hiring biases in the project that Parul ma'am was working on, right? So we had a question that both Parul ma'am and Andrada have been a voice of women in data science, right? Like you folks have really inspired others to come forward and to participate in this domain. Like, so thanks for that. And what would be your advice for girl graduate students to get into data science arena and break the first step barrier? Like it's like one of the most important questions that we need to like address as of 2021, right? Like how the industry is moving and all the hiring biases and stuff. So like
Yeah, and that I would want to listen to you. Yeah, please.
You're leaving me on this question, right?
I talk on this topic a lot. I wanted your point of view also.
Okay. So I know how important it is to feel represented. And I'm going to say this from another perspective first, not as a woman, but as a Romanian. So on Kaggle, if you look at top 50 nationalities in any area, it's usually people from India, from China, from Japan, from Russia, and United States. So these are like the main 5 countries. So I was doing Kaggle for around 3 months, and again, I wasn't realizing what I was doing. I was a baby, like a straight up baby. Didn't realize I was doing notebooks. I was just learning there. And I discovered the rankings on notebooks. And I saw in top 10 a Romanian name. And I was like, oh, wow, this is so inspiring. Top 10. His name is Gabriel Preda. I followed him very quickly. I was like, oh my God, a Romanian, yay! And that fueled me to the core, just because I was like, oh, we can do it as well. Now, it wasn't about the fact that I was Romanian. I could have been from Alaska. I could have been from, it doesn't matter. But unfortunately, our brain works like that, being like, oh, I don't see people like myself there, so I'm not going to even try because I am going to fail no matter what, which is not true, because we have almost the same capacities, the same brain, and you just need to want to do something and put your mind to it. And maybe it's going to take you 1 year, maybe it's going to take you 5 years. Take this from a slow learner. I don't like to call myself a slow learner just because I feel like I'm inflicting it. But this is how I felt in the data science, especially in my first year. I'm a slow learner, it's fine, I'm going to get through it. Now, I can understand the same feeling when I went there in those leaderboards and I saw only 4 to 5 women in top 100. So it wasn't in top 10, it was in top 100, 4 to 5 females. And I said, okay, just take a deep breath. Everything is fine. It doesn't matter. We can go into this because so no matter your gender, no matter your nationality, no matter your race, it doesn't matter anything. This is why the data science community is so nice, in my opinion. I feel like almost everybody or the vast majority of the people, it doesn't matter the background. We are very nice. We are super, super nice. And on Kaggle, we like to help each other and being like, hey, I think you did a mistake there in your code. Oh, thank you. Or a discussion being like, I have this problem, help. And everybody is like, oh, chill, relax, it's fine. This is your solution. Or saying, I don't know, creating something that you're proud of and seeing comments that are like, oh my God, you helped me so much. And like, oh, this is like, thank you. I'm glad. So it's a very, very nice community. It extends, in my opinion, on Twitter as well. We are very nice people in general. So no matter, try to break a little bit those barriers that I myself had, and I'm still having sometimes, based on your background and who you are. Try to identify more with these people that you're seeing the passion, because this is what it is. It's the thing that makes you happy, doing an analysis that shows you something, or creating a model that learns something. And oh wow, this is my baby, and I made him or her or it learn something, and this is absolutely amazing. So this is, I don't know if this was an advice generally, but I would try to follow the females that you like, but also follow the men that you like, because we have in common all great experience and great expertise, and just try to follow the passion, not the nationality or the gender or anything. In the end, yeah.
So final thoughts from Parul ma'am regarding this.
So data science is a diverse field, and we need a lot of diversity, whether it is gender-based, race-based, country-based. And for girls especially, there's just one thing that I have noticed when I've interacted. A lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome in data science, and that is true because you keep on seeing like there's some people who are winning competitions after competitions, and what they post, the solutions, you don't even understand half of it. And so people get into this imposter syndrome that what am I doing here? And the study has revealed that it's little more in females. So girls tend to suffer more. So what we as a society we can do is, so I've had examples where a few females have reached out to me and said, can you go through our Kaggle notebooks, and if you think it's okay, only then we'll publish it. So we have to come out of that cocoon. You just publish your work, post on LinkedIn, write articles, and don't worry so much, because if you always feel that you're going to be judged, then it's going to be very difficult for anybody to come out, and maybe a lot of people will support you, but then the final call has to be from you. And as a society generally, and maybe not only for females, but even if there are other genders also who feel a little less confident, we should encourage them. We should encourage them to come out. We should give them more chances to showcase their work, and help them, come out of their imposter syndrome. So that's what I'll say, because not everybody I know is confident. Social media has both its pros and cons. Mostly I remember when I had started writing on Medium, I used to get good comments also, but then some comments were really, really harsh. And at that point of time, you would feel like, how can if people like they don't like something, then why do they read it? What is the need to give such a bad comment? But then you have to remember that what we as humans, as psychologists, we tend to forget the 100 good comments, and we only remember that one bad comment. We have to change the psychology. If a person gives you a bad comment, think about the good comments that people have given you. I have learned it. I'm still learning. It was a long curve for me also. And once you start doing it little by little, this is going to help you build your psychology, your confidence. And so for if you have friends, if you have sisters and wives in there who also want to get active on Kaggle or any other medium, encourage them. And another thing that helps, why this helps is you form a network. Another problem with females today is that we don't have such good networks. Most of us work individually, and we don't sort of go and ask for help. On the other hand, boys have a good big community. I'm not sure how many females are even attending this one, except we can see in the chat. So I'm not even sure how many females are attending this. So that's also something, such events, you don't find questions from females. There are no questions from girls. And you see the amount of activity from boys and males. And so, of course, they're so confident, they're so active. They have such good network. They're going to help each other. Even for getting jobs, networking means a lot. So we have to come and become more active, ask questions, ask people to see your resume, advise how can your resume be good, or ask that, referrals, and also even the females should come out that way. So that is something. I know everybody is equally talented. We in India, if you see, I think we have a lot of engineering, highest maybe the ratio of engineering girls. There's so many of them. But then what, I don't know, after a few years, we just try to go into our own hidings. So that is something we have to encourage as a society so that we can build a diverse data science ecosystem.
Yeah, so this was one of the topics that we have been thinking about a lot in the last few months, because if we talk about Kaggle Days Meetup Delhi NCR speakers diversity as well as the attendees diversity, it has been quite skewed. We have seen the data from registrations and stuff. The speaker diversification has also been a major factor that we wanted to cover. So though we do not make any official announcement and stuff, but we definitely have thought of to include at least one female speaker. It's not because of gender or not because of diversity. It's because we want to value the skills, and we being India's first Kaggle Days community, we just want to bring more and more people to this setup. It's like we were missing that, and we have been thinking about that, and we just figured out a flow how to go ahead and how we can make it more diversified. We have been inspired by Women in Data Science community by Parul ma'am, that's run by her in Hyderabad and stuff. So thank you, and we just want to make it more diversified and want to bring more folks out of the cocoon, be it male, female, or any other gender. So thank you. And with that, I just want to thank Mohini from the organizing team and Andrada for joining, and Parul ma'am for joining and enlightening us with such an awesome discussion, right from the topic to the discussions that we had and the way it ended. So it's really good as a community, and we just want to make it going. So thank you, and yeah, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
And I can see a female in the comments, so great. Yeah. All right, bye, everybody.